Hello everybody, I'm getting this video out a little bit earlier today due to some travel on my end. Certainly have a lot to talk about from this past Monday, January 22nd. So unfortunately flooding in San Diego. We had a rainstorm come in kind of around the midday just before lunch. Dropped a tremendous amount of rain, certainly for San Diego. We're looking at the rain totals, just kind of a 48-hour window here across Monday. And nearly 3 inches of rainfall right around San Diego. I believe the San Diego airport there recorded its 5th highest daily rainfall total ever. One of the highest rainfall totals for the city, certainly in the month of January. It is El Nino. We talked about this kind of background state of the atmosphere with El Nino. We tend to get more of these systems through Southern California. Unfortunately, if they bring a lot of that rainfall all at once, nearly a month's worth, it can cause some big problems, especially right in these coastal areas where it kind of gets funneled down some of the coastal ranges there into the rivers. The San Diego River getting up very high. So a lot of videos, some very kind of harrowing videos of water rescues there. Haven't seen any reports yet of fatalities. So that is the good news as far as I know. But a lot of damage there, power outages, still cleanup happening, I think, throughout the rest of the week. So certainly a big situation down there. If we look just at the radar on Monday, again, January 22nd here, you can see this big system moving in. There's actually a low pressure system coming on shore, brought a lot of rainfall that you can see there through Southern California, kind of centered right on San Diego. And that brought a lot of that rainfall through in really, a short amount of time. That's how you get some of these big coastal flooding events here. Fortunately, as we go out into the forecast, not too much left in the way of rainfall in the immediate kind of 5 to 7 day forecast for California, save for this morning here. We have showers moving through coastal California, the central area, the San Francisco metro area. Rain showers being reported widely across the North Valley and the Sacramento Valley here, the Central Valley. Some of these even getting in now to the San Joaquin Valley. Not huge amount of accumulations from these, but there are some rain showers moving through and just a little bit of snow now moving up into the Sierra Nevadas. Nothing too significant here on this Wednesday. If we go out into the forecast, like I mentioned, it's going to be shifting a little bit drier for California. Only in the immediate future. You'll hear why I say that in just a second. A lot of those rain showers now shifting north up into the Pacific Northwest. We'll see more activities there. I'll take you through that in just a second here. But California will be shifting drier, and some other areas getting a break from a lot of the precipitation that we've seen, certainly in this El Nino winter. And that includes San Diego getting a break here. I think the rest of this week here, potentially into next week as well. That will change, I think, getting out further into the forecast. So stay tuned for that bit. Go over a look at the forecast precipitation here from the ECMWF. I'll make this valid here where we're talking here on the morning of Wednesday. There's those showers moving through the San Francisco area. We talked about them trying to get into the San Joaquin Valley, so this forecast lining up well with what's going on in reality. The Sacramento Valley getting those showers, seeing rain showers move through parts of the Pacific Northwest, maybe not quite as widespread as is suggested here on this forecast. When we take this through Wednesday night, that'll be clearing out slowly through the day Thursday and really looking at the next system coming through Friday PM for parts of the Pacific Northwest. Coastal areas seeing rainfall, the Willamette Valley getting showers from this, and that will be clearing out through the weekend. The next system might skirt through Monday for the Pacific Northwest. Yet to be seen if this kind of stays more offshore. You kind of saw there at the end if it was going to come more up into the kind of the Olympic area or come more into Oregon on Monday remains to be seen. But nonetheless, the chance for rain exists here toward the end of the weekend, the start of next week for folks in the Pacific Northwest. The next big system that we're watching is connected to yet another big extension of the Pacific jet stream. We've seen now a few of these. One was responsible, I think, for the flooding that we saw on Monday, taking a week off and seeing a resurgence of that Pacific jet coming down through parts of California, including parts of the Northwest, I think, with this event as well, Nevada, and then potentially all the way through Southern California and into Arizona, way out into the end of next week. Now, of course, that is, we're out beyond 7 days. We're going into the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday forecast, of next week, getting all the way out into February at this point. So can't talk about specific details on some of this stuff, but the stars are aligning for another Pacific jet extension to focus on California, bringing rain, snowfall to the Sierra Nevadas, the potential, of course, for some of these flooding events, just like we saw this past Monday. That's the kind of territory we're in January, in an El Nino year, right, with these extensions. And I'll make this forecast, this is the jet stream forecast from the ECMWF as well. I'll make this valid here for tomorrow, or actually Friday morning. And if we look closely, there is the culprit. That's that Pacific jet extension. We can see these very fast-moving winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere north of Hawaii. And they're kind of having their sights set on California. As I take this forecast through the weekend when we're to be relatively quiet in parts of California, Nevada, and Arizona. That jet stream is just going to be making its way over until ultimately by, it's looking like Wednesday of next week, if we had to put a date to it, right at the end of January there, where this jet stream is going to make its way all the way over, spinning a low pressure system up, potentially impacting the Pacific Northwest first very early on Wednesday, if not late Tuesday, and then eventually getting rainfall and snowfall through California and then through Southern California Wednesday through Friday of next week, really kind of the beginning of February there as we move through. That's the forecast right now, expecting more inclement weather for California, Nevada, Arizona, going through the end of next week. The Pacific Northwest getting rain showers in the meantime. Give you a quick update on the snow basins here. Still running below average in the Sierra Nevadas. We have gotten some big snowfall events, just had one here recently over the last 5 days. That's helping us. It got us out of those very, very low snowpack levels that we were in here just recently, now up over 50% of the historical average, at least at this point in the middle to end of January here. Cascades doing quite a bit better. I am keeping an eye on kind of the northern Cascades, the Yakima area, running just a bit below average here. And they're going to get some breaks from some of this precip, I think, with this Pacific jet extension focusing more on California and even Arizona at times. So keeping an eye on this area. Some of the reservoirs here are below average. We've talked about the Snake River Valley, closer to average here for snowpack in some of these mountain areas, but their reservoirs are actually kind of getting up toward average, if not over it. Sierra Nevada reservoirs, most of them, apart from some of these far southern ones, running above average as well. So one area that's not kind of out of the woods yet. We'll see where the snowpack ends up at the end of this year, but keeping an eye on the northern Cascades, at least at this point here in late January. Still time to make up for that, certainly as we go through kind of the peak of the water here in January, February, and then into March as well. So look at the NBM snowfall forecast. This is taken way out now. I'm going all the way out to Thursday, the total snowfall through that period, at least for the Sierra Nevadas, which I'll kind of highlight here, expecting a lot of snow here from the system next week. Again, details aren't clear because we're 7 days out from that forecast, but given that we have a Pacific jet extension, we have this background El Nino state, likely getting a system here through California Wednesday through Friday, expecting a good dosage of snow and snowpack improvement for the Sierra Nevadas. Will it get us all the way back up to average? Probably not, but it will get us quite a bit closer, I would think, here at the end of January, early February mark. If we just take a look at that percent of average here, we've looked at this graph a few times this year. I'll make it a little bit bigger for the video here. We are in red here this year in the 2024 water year to date snowpack at the Central Sierras. This doesn't cover the entire mountain range. Kind of a good proxy, at least for the Central Sierras. Southern Sierras actually running a little bit below this, I would think, at this point. But a nice improvement here lately. That's what we like to see, that big spike in that year-to-date graph for 2024. That got us a lot closer to normal. Unfortunately, if you kind of look at the increase here in the average, this is peak area. January into February is kind of peak, so it takes a lot of this quick movement and the snowfall, a lot of these frequent big snowstorms to get us back up close to average. We're seeing that. When I kind of posed this problem back at the end of January, I said we're going to need something like this to get closer to average, and I think we've seen, it's kind of the best that we can get in terms of getting back toward average. And in fact, if you look at some of these quantiles here, we're getting closer and closer to that average water year-to-date snowpack here in the Sierra. So good news there. More snow in the forecast next week. If we look out into February, El Nino, I think, is going to behave like it's been behaving with these Pacific jet extensions. There have been times where it hasn't been as bountiful for the Sierra Nevadas. We've seen some of these coastal systems. We've seen flooding, whether it was Santa Barbara or San Diego. But it hasn't been as efficient at getting some of these systems up into the Sierra Nevadas because they've been kind of curling up along the coast. There's some hints that it might try to do that next week as well on Wednesday. Those can still bring snowfalls to the Sierras, just not the huge copious ones that we're used to in an El Nino year. So we'll keep an eye on that going forward. Why exactly that's happening. There's some cold water lingering in the Pacific. We've seen kind of this Alaskan trough at times try to pull these extension lows up along the coastline. That's kept the Pacific Northwest wet at times as well throughout the year. It's just kind of curious. We'll keep an eye on that as we go forward here throughout 2024 as well. This is looking at the ECMWF ensemble precipitation anomaly forecast, really kind of through that first week of February. Kind of begins right at the end of January there on the 31st, goes out through that first week of February here. Kind of covers the end of the next work week through the weekend till the very beginning of the week after that. And what you're seeing here is the results of that big Pacific jet extension, right? This is your kind of quintessential El Nino type setup. We're actually a bit drier here in the Northwest, very wet across California, whether in your Eureka, whether in your San Clemente, all the way down through San Diego, parts of Arizona. Likely seeing rainfall from the system as it comes through Wednesday and Friday of next week, potentially more even through the weekend as well. Nevada included, Utah included. Likely seeing snowfall here across the Sierra Nevadas and the Intermountain West from the system here. Again, details 7+ days out, not clear, but strong likelihood that we do get a big system through this area here at the end of next week, with potentially some issues with wind and flooding along the coastline. And then, of course, with any big snowfall, you have avalanche and chain control, all sorts of things up in the mountains as well. Double checking the Madden-Julian oscillation. We check this to kind of see what the likelihood is of one of these Pacific jet extensions. We talked about going back to the middle, maybe even very early January, that if this were to get back out into the Western Pacific, where it is now in the forecast, in an El Nino year, that likely would coincide or at least might help influence a Pacific jet extension. I think we're seeing that now, kind of a textbook situation here. We're in January, we're in El Nino. This is where you kind of expect some of these big extensions, and we've seen that this year, certainly. We did see at the end of December, if you remember kind of talking through the holiday stretch there, we had one of these big extension events come through parts of California. And not shortly, but after that in early January, we switched to cold, very cold at times. We're talking about freeze warning, frost warnings all the way through the lower Colorado River Valley. San Joaquin Valley was seeing some hard freezes at times. And that was after the Pacific jet extension event that had come through. And we're seeing hints of that again. That cold was telegraphed well in some of the long-range models and ended up coming to fruition. I've talked at times how those long-range models, you got to take them with a grain of salt. Anytime you get beyond that 7 to 10 day forecast, our forecast confidence just naturally drops off very quickly. That's not going to change too much anytime soon. But occasionally those models pick up on signals. Occasionally they lead us in the right direction. That worked, or they were working. They were more accurate last time. They're telegraphing a similar cold shot coming into the western region of the U.S. You can see these low temperature anomalies getting out kind of near that second week of February. This is February 3rd to February 8th, looking at the ECMWF ensemble here, kind of taking it out to the end of its effective range. If we go over to the ECMWF extended, which goes out a little bit further, very similar pattern here. It's the same kind of model backing it, so that's not a huge shocker here, but seeing this hence again that after this Pacific jet extension event at the end of the next work week, maybe going into the work week after that, or even the weekend out well after that, we might be talking about some of these freeze warnings, frost concerns. You know, they can be a concern certainly kind of in the heart of January. You start getting into the middle of February now, getting out toward February 14th. Now we're kind of getting into that bloom season for some of these specialty crops out in the West, certainly for California and other areas. So keeping an eye on this, again, you still have to take it with a grain of salt. Just because it was right in early January doesn't mean it's going to be perfectly right in early February. But there's enough here to say, at least sound a small alarm and say, hey, let's keep an eye on this. We'll see where we're at next week. Should have some more confidence in what's going on with this cold snap that's been signaled here, at least in kind of the early to middle of February. Just checking in the Climate Prediction Center, their thoughts on what's going on over the next 6 to 10 days. Again, kind of taking out into the next work week. Warmer across virtually the whole lower 48. That's very common with some of these big Pacific jet extension events, and that certainly includes the western U.S., bringing snow levels up a bit as well in some of the mountainous regions. And the 6 to 10 day precipitation anomaly there on the bottom of the screen, I mean, again, just textbook for one of these big extension events. Same kind of picture if we go over the 8 to 14 day outlook, just stretching this out kind of through the next weekend as well, shifting a little bit further south in your quintessential Southern California, Central California, Southern Arizona, parts of Nevada. This is your kind of classic El Nino January forecast. We're seeing it here in 2024. I think that covers kind of this big Pacific jet extension event. Keeping an eye on the cold after that. Don't want to ignore, we do have some freezing fog out and some slick roads in the Yakima Valley here in northern Oregon. So cities like Yakima, Pendleton, freezing fog ring reported, black ice. Be safe if you're out here. This can be just as dangerous as some of these ice storms that we talked about because it's so subtle, right? You don't have the rain falling, kind of accumulating that ice, but you can still get very slippery roads, which causes a lot of those accidents, unfortunately. So that's all I have for you all here early Wednesday, coming out a little bit, the video at least coming out a little bit earlier, but nonetheless, thank you for watching, and I'll talk to you all next week.